Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Association of Jewish Libraries German Librarians Roundtable. German-speaking librarians. We know that this goes beyond Germany proper. Welcome. This is really exciting to have you all here. I'm going to turn the floor over to Michael Young, who is our international liaison. As far as cameras being on, it's if you don't want your picture on the recording, you should turn your camera off. I'm sorry, I should have said that initially. Michael, I'm going to turn it over to you for introductions.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. I think our objective is partly to hear from you and to brainstorm about how the association could best serve your needs. And so I would prefer to minimize my talking and my input. I do have some ideas and some queries for you, but this is really an opportunity to find out what we can do to serve you. So having said that, I'd like to open up the floor and hear from you and get better acquainted with your needs and expectations and ideas you have for what we could do for you.
Thanks. What I'm going to suggest is that everybody put their name, maybe institution, and time, current time, in the chat box, and that way we'll know at least who we are and who's talking. And I will start that off. As I'm talking. What did I want to, I'm going to briefly just say that one of the things that we've done, one of the things we're working on is, it's hard for me to type and talk, so I'm not going to type actually. One of the things that we're working on, and we hope to unveil actually at our conference in June, which is going to be virtual, so we hope that many of you will be able to attend, is an international directory of Judaica collections. These are Jewish libraries. These are libraries with Jewish materials. It's sort of very broad open. We have librarians who work in public libraries that serve predominantly Jewish communities. We have university libraries. We have national libraries. And so we're really looking forward to unveiling that map of Judaica libraries across the world that we will be presenting. As a sort of side point on that, we're also going to be, we recently unveiled our new website, and I'll just put that in the chat. And one of the things that we will be doing is a portal to specific Judaica libraries. So people who want to showcase their collections, be in touch, and we'd love to work with you to create a page on our website that highlights your collections. So that's another thing that we're doing that we would love for as many people as would like to get involved. Okay, so one of the things that we that Kirsten, do you want to talk about the collaboration, or should I go? I just feel like I'm talking a lot. And I want to give others a chance to speak. So,
yeah. So I mean, I can follow up maybe what was the idea behind this meeting, and
that would be great.
And yeah, and maybe also tell a little bit about the German Judaica Librarians, which is not a fully, there's no organization actually, although we had a meeting recently. And so the idea behind the meeting, at least as, like I guess there are two interests. There was an interest by Michelle and you from the AJL you have this international outreach. I was very appreciative of being able to attend the last conference, to be able to meet a lot of people. And as I told Michelle, for me, it was even a very interesting way because I kind of had the ability digitally to visit a lot of places I visited as a researcher over like 15 years of doing research. So that's also really a fun thing to kind of revisit those places from a different perspective. And so, that was a meeting where also in one of these rounds for the international librarians, there was actually the question is, are there similar organizations out there, similar things like the Association of Jewish Libraries? And I remember that in a British context, there is something that was also recently a meeting. And I mentioned in that meeting that there is a more loosely organized group of Jewish collections, which is not only librarians. And actually, my colleagues would need to help me to tell the story behind this, because I only know about it. But as far as I know about it, it's more or less a meeting where people gather once a year and exchange, get to know each other, meet. And it's not so much on a practical level. It's not so formally organized, which might sound surprising when you speak about Germans. But we, and that's the reason maybe why I and Michelle had the idea to organize such a meeting, is we as the collection at Frankfurt kind of play a little bit special role. We are first and foremost one of the larger collections, and in Germany actually the largest library collection. And we are in charge of a research service for German researchers in Jewish studies. And we had for various over 50 years, we had a national collection mandate in the field of Jewish studies and Israel studies, which was now recently transferred a few years ago into a more data-driven, development-driven, and e-resources-driven program. So it's unfortunately, and I say that with an exclamation point, not so much more about buying every book you can find, although I would love to do that, but it's rather trying to serve the specific needs of researchers, which also includes e-resources, ebooks, and data services and stuff like that. But part of our job is also, and has always been, to collaborate and support other collections. And we have just convened in about a little bit less than a month ago with a lot of people who are today also in the meeting, who are working in German librarians and German libraries and German collections, and started to talk about our common interests. So it's not my goal to found any association. I don't have any time for that. But we try, and since we are often also a go-to place for certain questions on cataloging, on authority data, that's the English term, I need to remind myself, people come to us, and we kind of have also some opportunities to reach the ears of certain institutions and places in the German system, which is also quite complicated when it comes to libraries. That's like just for that part. That's basically the background.
Thanks, Kirsten. So one of the reasons that Kirsten and I, well, really it was Kirsten's idea to thought about bringing us all together was because I worked very closely with Kirsten on the University of Frankfurt. I see Annette's here as well, with a collaboration on the Footprints Project. And this is a project that I co-direct to map the movement of Jewish books across place and time. So we're tracing owners' marks and all sorts of other things that identify where and when something may have happened to a book that was printed prior to 1800. And it was a very successful collaboration. And this was something that really came about through, I think we met through AJL. Was that maybe? I don't even remember at this point.
Yeah, actually, you started this with Rachel before, and I kind of...
That's right.
Inherited this project, but actually I know about it already from the research perspective, and I really loved it from the beginning.
Yeah,
so maybe
that's really one of the wonderful things. I was going to go through footprints a bit more, but I don't think I need to here. But what I want to really focus on is that one of the things that AJL does is because it brings us all together. We are around the world, but we all work on really similar ideas and similar things. I mean, Kristen mentioned the authority questions that many of us deal with. And acquisitions. I joined the UK meeting last week, and it was so interesting because it was a different perspective on acquisitions and where we really have what to learn from one another. We're essentially doing the same things, and we need to, if we share our common needs and then our uncommon, what we don't have in common, how we might be able to assist one another in the work that we do. And I feel like I have to reiterate this because it has been, the AJL has been sort of broken down to the American Jewish Libraries Association, which is false. It's the Association of Jewish Libraries. It is an international organization. It is the leading authority in Judaica librarianship, and it is the largest and really only large group like that of its kind. There are small groups, as we said, around the world. There's one in Israel. There's the UK one that we talked about. There's the German group that met. But we would love to support you all to the extent that we can and really learn from you. So that's really what we're trying to do here. So while I feel like I would love to, tout footprints and tell you all to join the project, and I would love to have you join. I don't want to spend too much time on that thinking as we move forward, because I feel like we can have those conversations later and more on an individual level. What I will ask Kirsten to do, though, is to say maybe what this collaboration achieved for you, and then just how, as an example of sort of how we can work together when we are in touch with one another.
I have actually just put together, because we anyway have to do it because we will do a presentation on it also on HL, a few slides. It's always easier, I guess, to make things visible. And I'm also not sure whether everybody knows it, the Footprints project. I hope, it's like that would be my goal, and yours more even than mine. But just let me share my screen. So I hope you see my screen.
Yeah, we can see.
So it's really just 4 slides summarizing the very key elements of the project, which I guess showcases also some of the value Footprints adds to librarianship and research. And I guess especially a collection like ours are really at the intersection of both elements. So it was a research project which ran in 2019 and 2020. It was conducted by a scholar in residence, which was something new for our library. Very unique. Dr. Lucia Raspe is an expert in early modern Jewish history and was already very familiar with our collection. This was very helpful actually for us. She was supported by library staff, and Annette is today here, so she could even also add to that. And we focused on our Hebrew incunabula and mainly also on the Yiddish prints. There were plans to look on other Hebrew books, but kind of that was not possible in the scope we hoped, but we will try actually to add over time more information. So I hope you see the next slide. Sometimes it doesn't, yeah. So what are the results? So we identified over 1,000 footprints, and which are uploaded to the database of footprints. The incunabula produced quite a lot, like 4 to 5 footprints per copy. The Yiddish prints less than expected. There are several reasons for that. But still, they were quite interesting as a source. They were also interesting for footprints because they provided a very interesting challenges, speaking of authority data and stuff like that, as the footprints works usually with the bibliography of the Hebrew book as the identifier for the work title, when I'm not mistaken. And yeah, well, a lot of Yiddish books we have are not in the bibliography of the Hebrew book, but the National Library of Israel kindly started to produce a new unilist of Yiddish prints, which is then actually our solution here, or the solution Michelle came up. And yeah, so this is basically almost all data is already in footprints, when I'm not mistaken. We are currently revising this data to be able to insert it into our catalog. There are some challenges that has to do with the data models, which are quite different. In this case, also with language, we unfortunately cannot insert the English phrasings into the catalog. There are also some regulations we have to follow. So Annette is still busy with this project, but again, we are very happy about it, and it's a lot of fun. So yeah, so what we gained, and I guess that's basically the selling point here, and I'm really trying to sell this too. So provenance information is very important, and that was also one topic actually in our meeting we had with the German librarians recently, that provenance is a big issue. And although it's very focused on the whole question of looted books, provenance goes far beyond that. And here you have an example how you can approach it from a very different perspective. With regard to the insights, I just want to highlight two also very interesting insights on Yiddish print collection. It's, first of all, we recorded almost 30 footprints relating to women. You see one on the right side. This is a book which belonged once to Bele, the daughter of Salman, probably from Norden. Yeah, these are books, where women are really included as somebody who, how to say, presented a book to somebody else as a gift, or they owned it, or stuff like that. We have also women as benefactors. For our collection, larger collection from the Rothschild family came to the collection via the widow of Karl Wilhelm von Rothschild. So this is also important. And then the geography is also very distinct to the Yiddish books collection, because although the typical printing places, the typical collection places, and the larger places where Jewish books were collected are present, you also find 45 very small places in German-speaking Europe, only once in footprint. So we kind of broadened the geographical, diversified kind of the geographical base for footprints.
And I should say that was really a huge part of our connecting with you, was that we realized that we were sort of missing Central Europe. And so we really wanted to bring that in there.
Yeah. So, and then for us, really, like on the very specific personal, or not like institutional level, more to say, is that we also learned more and gained more insight on the history of our collection. We were able to, we see the work of librarians. I guess that's not specific to us, but like the librarians we are seeing here are specific. It's Arndt Freimann, it's also people you don't know, like Raphael Kirchheim, who cataloged one collection which was donated mid-19th century, and so on and so forth. And we were able to attribute more than 60 titles or copies to specific private collections that once entered the library. And these 4 collections are the following. It's the collection by Nehemiah Brühl, who was a rabbi in Frankfurt, and actually most of the Yiddish prints come from his collection. Abraham Berliner was a scholar and a rabbi. He is one of the proponents of Orthodox Wissenschaft des Judentums. Karl Wilhelm von Rothschild is considered the last Rothschild of Frankfurt, in the sense of the last finance person, entrepreneur. And when he died, his wife allowed Aaron Freimann to collect Hebraica and also manuscripts from the collection. And then Freimann, in a few years later, or only 2 years later or so, spearheaded a big fundraising effort within the Jewish community in Frankfurt to buy the Merzbacher collection for the university library, which at that point was the so-called Stadtbibliothek, so municipal library, which later became the university library. And on the side, you see some of the stamps and also the stamps of the Frankfurt collection. Yeah, and that's really important. And like just for the for three of these collections, we have catalogs, but not for Brühl. So it's also important, and for us, for the Hebraica, it's also important we don't have a catalog of the Hebraica, and lots of the Hebraica are lost, but not all. So it actually helps us to understand what is the historical part of the collection. That's also important for us. So I stop here, and would also like, if there are questions on that, I guess there would be time, and we are open, me or Michelle, and even Annette, I guess.
Could I add something?
Yes.
Sure.
I just wanted to point out that the inventory book of the Hebrew Freiman collection was found by myself in the Schocken Institute in Jerusalem in about 1989, and I was able to pass a microfilm to Rachel Heuberger. So there is a documentation on what was in the collection. It is, of course, short title listings in an inventory book, but there is a record, which is a small consolation for what is lost.
Yeah, it's a very interesting document. Let's say this. But it's also very short titles sometimes. But it's very interesting because it also includes actually the call numbers, which is also quite interesting, because sometimes it might be the basis for some things to do in the future. Let's see.
Yeah. I should also point out that, obviously the Goethe University collection is a well-known, huge Judaica collection. But we've worked with a lot of smaller collections, with 20 or 30 Judaica, books of Judaica in various languages. And that also has turned out to be very useful. One of the things that we are working with the University of Texas, I believe it's at Austin, their Ransom Center, which is a huge special collections. And I spoke to the curator there, and there's no specific, there's a Judaica librarian, but there's nobody in rare books there for Judaica. And he said, oh, well, we have, 2.5 bookcases of uncatalogued Judaica. Is this something potentially of interest? And so that kind of thing we are also very much interested in working with. And we've worked with interns, with graduate students, all sorts of things for collections that don't have dedicated Judaica librarians. And again, this is something that AJL also brings into play, where there are a lot of collections with no dedicated resources for Judaica. And we want to work together to sort of make that better and help one another.
That's
Renata,
a huge task.
But it is.
But they are Judaica and Hebraica in thousands of places where we don't know about, or where some old people know about. That would be a survey that would, we can't even get the act together in Germany to run a survey. And I've come across in the Prussian State Archives in Berlin, I found a survey from the 1930s done by the Nazis prior to the looting of Jewish libraries in Germany. And I have all the paperwork in my files and never published it. It is a huge task to
Indeed. And we worked with Audrey Effenberg's survey of incunabula missing from Judaica collections post World War II. We actually incorporated all of those data into as just one example, into our database. And because we did that, we were able to identify at least one missing incunable that is currently held. Like, we know where it is. It was from the Breslau Seminary, and it's now at the Jewish Theological Seminary because of unique identifiers. So we're actually, when we first started, a lot of people looked askance. We currently have something like 16,000 records and counting.
When you say we, you always mean the Footprints Project.
In this particular case, I mean the Footprints Project.
Okay. You don't mean AGL as an organization.
AJL doesn't. No. AJL is more the umbrella for the libraries. The Footprints. I'm sorry, I should be more clear about that. Renata, you had a question.
Yeah. So it's more a sidetrack question. I just couldn't resist. But first, Kerstin, thank you so much for this great presentation. And I'm totally thrilled that so many more footprints are available, and I can't wait to explore it. So I'm really looking forward. One of my favorite projects of all times. But you mentioned that in the course of this, you discovered, or you found out, that a significant part of the Hebraica collection is still around. And I was not aware of that. I mean, it's a total sidetrack question. So what is your estimate? How much is still there?
Sorry, I was distracted because I actually cannot, I see I cannot respond to questions. Somebody sends me direct to the chat. It's a technical problem on my side. So just for people who somebody did that. So you asked what is there from the old collection from the Hebraica. So actually I have no numbers. There is this list Silke Schäfer mentioned. It has about 10,000 entries. I'm not sure. We just had it, and I had it just a bit in hand. It's a very let's see. I had seen a copy of the microfilm, and the copy is not the best of a not so good microfilm. So we will see. But
I think from my memory, I used to know the percentage, but it's a long time ago. I think the articles have been published about it, possibly also by Rachel. I think the oldest part of the collection has survived because it wasn't stored together with the others that got a hit.
Yeah. So that I can. Yeah. So I can add to that. So basically, what survived is the very valuable things because they were part of an exhibition. And so they were actually stored offsite soon enough. Rachel Heuberger's interpretation was that the people were so much in front of the Nazis that they didn't believe in the failure of the war, so they actually were very late in securing everything. So that's her interpretation why so much of the collection or of the library building burned down. And before that happened, some parts of the collection were stored off-site, and this included everything which was in this permanent exhibition, including several very valuable manuscripts, 8 of which were actually sold in a reconciliation process with the Frankfurt Jewish family in 1950. 2 of these manuscripts are today in public collections. Again, one is the Mishneh Torah in the Israel Museum. The other one is a Bible from the Rothschild family, which is at Getty Museum, I guess. I just recently saw that.
They were given out for a street building project.
I know. Frau Schäfer, may I answer these questions? It just would be really nice if you let me. And the other part of the collection which survived actually was discovered by Ernst Löwy, who was the librarian in the 1950s and 60s. And he discovered the Yiddish prints and some other Hebraica. But, and that is a little bit the tricky thing, there might be more dispersed in other parts of the collection because the library did several projects, and it's not clear and not visible, of so-called umsignieren, so changing signatures, taking elements out of the historical Judaica collection, putting it in other parts. And I might be able to see tomorrow a Haggadah from Amsterdam from 1695, which I hope is in color, because then we could use it for something, another project I have just now. It's marked as Judaica, so I find it in my catalog, but it's actually not in my collection. So we have to ask other people to get it. So there is some weird, and that's okay, it's recorded, so it's somewhat public here, but there was some kind of, nobody valued this collection after. There was only a short period when Ernst Löwy was in charge for it. A person who didn't know Hebrew didn't know the value of the collection. And when he left, it took till Rachel Heuberger came in 1991 to have a dedicated Judaica librarian. They had the money to buy all the books, but there were dedicated people in the library, but there were no experts in the sense of Judaica librarians. So, what we have today, we also owe much to Ernst Löwy, who saved stuff, and then to Rachel. And that's just, we have to make that clear.
I think even far beyond the specific university collection, we owe quite a lot to Rachel. Those of us who use the Sammeln all the time. She's amazing.
Yeah.
I want to give Rachel Greenblatt a chance to ask her question.
Super quick. Thank you so much, Kirsten, and all the people from Frankfurt, and to Lucia who's not here. It's amazing. And I'm so happy that this is all uploaded. I just want to point out something that we have in common with North American Library with you. There's a million things I'd like to say, which is the benefactor of women, and women as important founders of the library specifically, because Brandeis certainly has that. Maybe someday I'll get to spend more time on the papers and really bring it to light, but the people still who fund the library are aware of their origins in that way. It was called the Brandeis Women's National Committee. They are completely responsible for the library, and they have German origins also, right? So it, both in terms of women benefactors in general, in terms of the specific connections, it's worth looking at someday. And I would just love, I love your slides. I would love it to have a picture of Mr. Rothschild's wife and widow also, right? I mean, to just sort of start highlighting this, how much women are behind the scenes. I'm sure you wanted it and couldn't find it, but I just wanted to say it. Thank you. Mostly wanted to say thank you.
I'm pretty sure from her I can find one. I will have to really look, but I'm pretty sure there is one. And there was actually this one question somebody directed directly to me. So this I can answer. The old Stadtbibliothek Frankfurt, the municipal library, is today the university library. So it became university and like Stadt- und Universitätsbibliothek at some point. And then about 15 years ago or less, we became university library. Technically, it's a very interesting thing. The old collections are actually still the property of the city. They're kind of on loan to us. So that makes sometimes stuff, actually the database of footprints is not, when it says owner, it's not exactly technically right. Our colleagues pointed out, but we said, no, we don't want to mess up this. Nobody understands this when we write Stadt Frankfurt.
we do have some instances in footprints. I'm not going to mention them with the recording on, but where the language is very, very careful. And often the owner, it's not listed as an owner. It says this institution acquired. It just came to them. And we're not going to discuss the, how it got there or make any judgments. Yossi, I saw you unmuted. Did you want to say something?
Yes, I just wanted to ask if there was done a survey about the collections of the National Library in Jerusalem, the Gershon, the Sholem collection. I'm sure there are many books there that are missing from some German libraries.
It's an excellent question.
As a representative of German library, I would never claim those books back. They are fine there.
No, I'm sure that I find there, but at least for the footprints program,
yeah, it's a really interesting question, and it's a good question. And when we haven't done the Sholem Library yet, we did a project with a number of libraries where we were doing a strong focus on incunabula. We worked with the Material Evidence and Incunabula Project, and one of the institutions that was surveyed was the National Library of Israel, but that was only incunabula, so it wasn't the entire Shokin collection. That's something that would be really interesting to move forward with. And we've seen so many things. I mean, we've seen books from libraries that exist today. And I'm not talking, I can think of 3 or 4 offhand, so don't judge anybody, where their books are actually in a different library because they sold off those books. And so it's that cycle, like Renata says, it's the cycle. It just keeps, the books move. And it's wonderful when we can identify where these books went. It doesn't always happen. We have some, I encourage you all, if you're interested in this, there's going to be a session where Kirsten's going to speak and a few other people who have been working specifically at the conference, at the AJL conference, who have been working on this. And there have been some really interesting sort of matches where books that were identified in one place, but the actual physical book, nobody knew where it was. And then others found them because they were looking for footprints or they were working on the project. So I hope this will continue. Silke, did you want to? Do you have a comment?
One more question.
Oh, sorry.
If I may,
Yossi.
If I may, one more question. My area is more biobibliography. And I know that in Germany, there was the Bibliographia Judaica project, and that began, I believe, even before the war. Is it something that is still done? I mean, still updated?
The bibliography of the Hebrew book?
No, it's the bibliography of Jewish authors, of German-speaking Jewish authors.
Oh, I don't.
It is Bibliographia Judaica. It was published by, I believe, Olms in 4 volumes.
I think it is going on. I forgot the name of the lady who runs it, but there is a huge project
Yeah.
being published with Sauer.
Yeah, that's actually a little bit something else, but there are 2 things. The Bibliographia Judaica project was actually on persons and places. And it was one of the last big Wissenschaft des Judentums projects, actually. And the project on the places is continued in a different way in the Gallia Germania, and I'm not mistaken. It's a German-French project where the Hochschule für Jüdische Studien is involved, and they try now actually to even enlarge this. It's really more focused on this places elements. I can share the links, but I'm not able to search while talking. And the one that Silke Schäfer mentioned is a little bit different, but actually might be interesting for you. It's a project by, now maybe somebody has to correct me because I don't get her first name right.
Renate.
Renate Heuer. She was
Yes.
actually often mistaken with Rachel Heuberger, and I'm still getting mail for her. She died actually about 6 years ago, and this was a project on Jewish authors. And this project is like literary authors, writers.
I think that's what Yossi meant.
This is what I meant.
Yeah, and that is the project. Yeah, and she did that, and this now went, because it's also, as Silke Schäfer correctly said, it was connected to the publishing house Sauer, which now belongs to the Greuter. The Greuter bought every publishing house which they could find, almost. It's like the impression you got. And they now started this as a database, and in collaboration with literary studies scholars. And there will be a workshop in fall in Berlin, and they also invited me to this, seeing where this goes. Let's see, there is an issue in Germany with funding structures, because all big funding agencies now go for open science. So actually, they will get issues with continuing this when this is behind a paywall. So, and they also actually like to use our open access stuff in a digital collection, and I already got access to that. So let's see what happens there. But the database already exists in a digital form. You can get trial accesses, but I cannot tell you much about it at a moment. But something is happening there, let's say that.
Well, my question mainly is this project still active? Is it still be updated? Is there someone who, is there a continuation to the project?
Ask me back again in fall when I met the people who are doing that, then I can judge. At the moment, I only got the infos by the publishing house, and there I would, again, this is recorded.
I could pause the recording if you.
It's fine. No, it's. I mean, there is a difference when you talk to scholars about such projects than what the the PR team of a publishing house tells you. But there is some efforts to work with that, and I talked to colleagues from the Jewish literature research field, one also who will be involved in this workshop, and she also said she's very interested in what's happening there. They will also present how you work with that, and so let's see.
Thank you.
Silke.
I just wanted to go back to collection history in Frankfurt. There were efforts in the post 33 years by Salman Schocken to buy Hebrew books and manuscripts from Frankfurt. And there is an extensive exchange of correspondence. And his go-between was Heinrich Eisemann, quite a well-known book and autograph dealer who managed to escape last minute to the UK. And this whole attempt by Schocken, who kind of knew that, German Jewish collections were doomed. I mean, it sounds maybe a bit strange, but Heinrich Eisemann certainly had the urgency, and he knew that this would be an opportunity to rescue Hebrew items from German public collections. And this correspondence I've documented in my MA thesis way back. And this may be something I should publish in English so that it is at least the record of it. It's fascinating. And the director of the library was called Richard Oehler, and he was a Nazi. And he led Heinrich Eisenman into the collections day by day, and Eisenman worked on the books and corresponded constantly with Salman Schock. And it's a crazy and fascinating correspondence, really.
Sounds like it. All right, I want to give others in the room, in this virtual room, a chance as well to, like, we had a couple of ideas of what might be of interest, but I certainly don't want to push the conversation in any direction. I would love to hear from some of the other librarians in the room who might be interested in collaboration, who might have questions, who might, anything really. What can AJL do for you? But AJL, of course, is made up of individuals. So it's how can we work better together? I would love to hear from some of the others here as well.
One thing that we can do is just add the librarians from Europe into our mailing list. And I'm not talking about Safran, but to the librarians, the
bibliographers list.
Yes.
So we do have, that's limited to those who do acquisitions, but we do have a list. Kristen, are you part of that? It's the Carl JS? No. So we recently added, this happened, I feel like this is an echo because this happened last week at the UK Librarians meeting as well. But it is important and really useful, actually. We have a list of librarians who do acquisitions that we call sort of a semi-closed list, because the idea of the list is that people who are working with vendors buying and selling might want to ask questions that they don't necessarily want to ask in a public forum, like Hasafran. Hasafran is our broad librarians listserv, which covers every single aspect of Judaica librarianship. And I encourage you to join if you're interested. It's really a broad swath. But the Carl JS list, and Yossi is wonderful at managing all of our lists. But so this is a list for those who acquire Judaica specifically. And I can put in my email. I don't know, Yossi, if they should email you directly if they would like to join. Either way.
Either way.
Well, that's my email. So if that sounds like it's something that's of interest, one of the things that came up last week was this question of approval vendors or who people are dealing with to acquire materials from Israeli publications. And like I said earlier, the discussion was very different than that I had with my colleagues in the Northeast United States, for instance. And I think, again, this is an area where we can really work together and learn together from each other. So that's another area. Thank you, Yossi. Chaim.
Hi. So, Michelle, can I still ask Kristen one question and then move on to one point? Something?
Yeah, I wanted also, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so Kristen, I've been using your digitized Hebraica in Knabi a lot for cataloging. In cataloging Hebrew and Knabi ourselves, it was like a tremendous asset. I was wondering if you could take a few minutes, describe the project that or the workflow project that went into the digitizing project of the Hebrew and Knabi.
This was done actually before I came, so I have no inside knowledge. So Rachel did that as part of the, some might know, and the Germans might know it better. There is a huge European project on digitizing cultural heritage, which is called Europeana. And there was once the Judaica Europeana 1 that was like coordinated in Frankfurt. And as part of this project, we digitized the Hebrew manuscripts and the Incunabula, and all what is there is digitized. And for the Incunabula, that is always, you know, catalogs can be very helpful if they are maintained well and not some secret list somebody discovers in 1990, not secret, but unknown to the German library. The Incunabulas were well documented. So, you know, we did know what is there, and so that was helpful. And yeah, so you have everything there. The unfortunate thing is we don't have good catalog records for the prints. We only have it for the digital version.
I've noticed.
And you might refer to that, and that's still an open thing. And the problem is a little bit that, yeah, the people who have to do it are actually in this call, and we are a little bit overwhelmed with a lot of work.
And they're doing so much work already.
Yeah, and they would love to do it, but we have a very big issue. I guess everybody of us has it. We cannot stop time, and we cannot clone each other. But this is still, it's a big issue. But yeah.
So on that note, and this is something that I've discovered, or it came to me, fell in my lap more recently, starting around October, is that there are many libraries that have Hebraica or Hebrew Incunabula specifically collections in their libraries don't have catalogers to work on them sometimes. So I've been asked a number of times from a number of libraries to look over the records or to help create the records. And I was wondering, maybe like an AJL service of kind of outsourcing records. I mean, you could always download my records because almost a lot of our books parallel each other. But I think this might be something.
This is something that I know happens informally. I know specific catalogers who are hired by other institutions to catalog, even remotely to catalog their materials. It might be interesting. Maybe this is something Chaim to bring to the cataloging committee as,
that's what I did. I emailed Neil. It's like one of the things, two ideas that I want to bring up starting from.
I mean, and the other piece is that we have to remember that everybody has, you know, their full-time day job. So before offering somebody else's, you know, it's a wonderful idea. And I think something that can be,
So let me just bring up on this point. So the Huntington Library, this is actually with the result of the Footprints project. I mean, you mentioned this, that I discovered that the Huntington Library has a Voltaire. Let me just.
That was in Footprints.
Yes, but I didn't know that Voltaire was in Huntington at the time. So I made this connection. I said, you know, why don't you use the record I created? Because I create the records for an ideal copy. And then they actually ended up using that record. So the idea is that it's not that copy specific, but then they would weed out what they needed for their library. And the idea is
my hesitation with the reason that I was able to identify the Huntington copy as the Voltaire copy, as the Rosenthal copy, really, it was from the Ludwig Rosenthal catalog, was because it wasn't an ideal copy, because it specifically said that it was missing volumes, the volumes that it was missing, because it said what was wrong with the book. That's how I was able to match it against.
Right. I'm thinking of a different book, but it's
the bookseller's catalog. Okay.
There about, I think there's 6 Voltaires at the Huntington, and I think there are 2 in Footprints. I was thinking of a
this also comes back to you know, copy specific cataloging and how important that is as well.
Right, and that's easy to manage. But I think the idea is that this might be an area as a service that AJL. I know it's a big thing. We have our day job.
Yeah, and I want to just bring us back to the conversation that we were in. I don't know that a German library can use an American catalog record because it has to be in German and they have their own rules for it. Right. I do think this is a wonderful idea and we should pursue it. But I'm gonna turn to another question. Because I want to make sure we stay on target to the particular topic of the roundtable here. Thank you, Renata.
Okay, I just wanted to go into a more general direction and echo Kathleen Bloomfield. So basically, one of the silver linings of the pandemic is, that we are all very familiar with virtual meetings and are all set up to do virtual meetings. And especially in our field, Judaica collections are by their very nature international. So, I mean, what are the boundaries? They're none. Now, and so that we can come together in different groups, I mean, that is just priceless. And we saw it already, the AJL conference last year. That was, I think that was one of the most, I mean, many of them were very successful, but that was one of the most surprising and successful online events where so many librarians could participate who would have never dreamt about going to an AJL conference because there's never the time nor the money in our small organizations. And the idea of having these virtual roundtables where ideas can come up, I mean, I would absolutely support that. And I mean, to getting a glimpse into, I mean, what other countries are doing, like the Hebraica librarians in the UK, that is absolutely priceless. No, and I hope that we can continue that and I mean take advantage of that, because we will never have the money to do, I mean, to send everybody to all the conferences and meetings and detailed questions. So please keep it on. Thank you.
Thank you, Renata. So what Renata's referring to is that we have two kinds of virtual meetings. We have our roundtables, which are generally limited to members only. In this case, it was an exception because we really do want to welcome you on board and extend our arms in whatever way we can. But generally, those are for members only. And then we have the AJL Presents, where we have sort of more frontal-facing, either lectures or where an AJL member presents on a topic that they worked on. So it's showcasing their work. So an example of that is like a book talk or I did one on teaching remotely with special collections. So that was something that we all could, and we actually did that in partnership with the Association for Jewish Libraries. Thank you, Chaim. Yeah, we have roundtables and presentations scheduled through the fall, and we really do hope to continue this. We are very much going to stay connected virtually, I think, as we move forward, even as we go back to physical conferences. We're really working on very much having a virtual component to be as inclusive as possible. Kathy.
I just wanted to say, to welcome you all, and we would love to have you as members of AJL. If there's a financial issue, please let me know, because to me, membership means more than although money is always money, it means more to me than to be able to say we have an international organization is very important to me. So if it's a financial issue, please let me know and we can work something out. Because our roundtables are limited to members, and our new website gives us a lot more flexibility in being able to identify where our members are located and how to group people in a, not just RAS and SSCPL, but, European, Israeli, whatever. So I just would love to have you all be members of the association and to see you at our conference, which we have been told on numerous occasions, and thank you, Renat, for supporting that it was one of the best online conferences of the year last year. And we didn't know what we were doing. So
we planned it in 6 weeks.
Exactly.
It was in June. We switched.
It was like amazing. But we had more time to plan this year's, and I think this year's conference is going to be so wonderful. We really would love to see you there. Next year, we're planning to be in 2022, we're planning to be in Philadelphia. We do have Rothschild money that we've postponed for, I hope it's okay if I'm saying this, Michelle.
We have funding for international attendees,
people to
specifically
come see us, to be with us.
And so we very strongly encourage you to, once that all comes forward, to apply for funding. We are really committed to bringing people in when it's in the States. We've been having some conversations about maybe moving outside the US for our conferences. Although that will it's a huge amount of work to create an in-person conference. So that needs a huge amount of on the ground work as well. So if there is a very solid interest, that might be something that we could talk about. We did once have an Israel conference, and that's something we've been talking about as well. I want to just, sorry, Kathy, I want to just clarify, because
I
we
just
didn't.
wanted to do my plug, and now I'm
Yeah,
gonna
no,
quiet.
I want to just clarify, because you said RAS and SSC. And again, I think most people in the room are more on the research side, but our organization consists of research, archives, and special libraries in one division, and schools, synagogues, center, and public libraries in the second division. And that's really critical as well. We had an example with, I don't know how many of you know about the Jewish Public Library in Vilnius, but the director of that library came to AJL and has been a regular attendee since. And one of the results of him coming was that he worked with a couple of librarians from Boston to actually build his collection significantly. And then he presented on how coming to AJL helped him to build his library. And I think that's, when I think, because I'm in an academic institution, so when I think international, I think of the university libraries. But it's really important to know that there are also community libraries, and there are synagogue libraries also everywhere. And, we have a very active member in Spain, for instance. And so we really want to continue supporting that. We have about 4 minutes left, so I want to give a chance if there is anybody who hasn't spoken, who wants to say something or anything. Now's your chance. You can also turn off the recording if that makes people more comfortable. Go ahead, Jackie.
All right. So first of all, I'm so glad to see everyone. My virtual trip to Europe for the spring. And as you noticed, I dropped a link into the chat if you weren't looking. I've been researching the U.S. Army / survivors Talmud, which I use Chaim's record, talking about cooperative cataloging. But he actually worked at AJU at the time. Anyway, I'm trying to locate every single volume. And according to my research, 50 sets were left in Germany. So if you have a Talmud printed in 1948, please participate in my survey. So it's kind of like a modern footprints. Maybe it's combat group prints. Sorry about that.
Jackie, give people a 20-second, 10-second what the Survivors Talmud is. They might not know what you're talking about.
Okay, so the survivors of the Holocaust were in DP camps throughout Europe, and they wanted to go back to studying and asked the U.S. Army to help them reprint a photo offset Talmud, and long and involved. But the long and short of it, between the U.S. Army, the Joint Distribution Committee, and Vahat Sala, they managed to create a full set of a full folio edition of Talmud, and it has a very moving title page. And I've been researching the artist, Grisha / Hirsch / about 17 other variations of the name Rosencrantz.
It's a pretty powerful. The title page has a picture of the barbed wire from the concentration camp, and there's a thank you to the U.S. Army.
I'm looking for I think it's on the external hard drive, which means I can't.
Thank you, Jackie. Now people know what they're looking for.
Yeah, there.
So I'm gonna say thank you all for joining us today, and please be in touch if there's anything we can do. I put my email in the chat if anybody else wants to share their email contact information. This has been recorded. If anybody wants, and the public chat has been saved. Will be saved as part of the recording, so you'll be able to see that there. If you want to save the chat now, you can click on the 3 dots next to the word file, and you'll see there's an option to save the chat. So you can just save it locally to your computer if there were any links that you missed that you wanted to be sure to save. Great. Thank you all. Stay well. And it was lovely to see some of you for a brief moment. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.